Hello. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Please, it's my great honor today to start our webinar. We are talking today about mergers and acquisitions and how to transform technology after such events. So I'm super excited to have great speakers with me today. And I think we want to discuss this topic because as maybe many of people in our audience already know, it's always merger and acquisition. They can always bring some new growth opportunities for businesses. They can bring synergies and the possibility to scale to new markets. That's great. But at the same time, such projects, they usually involve transformation of the technology side of things, because then you have new companies joining together. So you have to find synergies between the companies, the products, the technologies, different tech stacks, different teams. So there are a lot of challenges, and especially that for many tech leaders, this is uncharted territory. They do it for the first time. So that's the reason today we've gathered a group of veterans, industry experts who already have gone through such projects successfully. So we want to dive today into this topic and discuss, get hands-on experiences on how to succeed through such initiatives. So I'd like to welcome our speakers and introduce you one by one. So starting with Adam Ludera, who is heading engineering at Sojalink. Hi, Adam.
Hey.
It's really great to have you today with us. Okay, and also we have Ayaz Chakra, who is a co-founder of Pet Media Group. Hi, Ayaz.
Hey guys, good to be here.
Thanks for joining. We've got Bart van Muyen from Pro for All, CEO of the company. Hi, thanks for joining. And we've got Marek Gajda, who is currently Chief Operating Officer, formerly CTO of the Software House, the company that I'm also part of, and the organizer of today's webinar. Hi, Marek.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Likewise. Okay, so now what I would like to do is maybe give each of you like 30 seconds just to introduce yourself and the company that what you do, so just the audience understands more the business that you represent and the kind of experience that you can bring to the table. So maybe the same order, starting with Adam.
Okay. So Adam Ludera, as said, head of engineering at Sojalink, one of 3 people in that position. So I'm responsible for a bunch of products in our company. We specialize in construction software. So we supply the construction chain from the design up to the maintenance. So all the pathway also through the building, making sure that everything is secure and so on. We are running right now something around 60 different products, went through a lot of acquisitions, a lot of mergers. And as a company, we are French, Dutch, and Norwegian company. I think that should be enough for now.
Yes, a lot of acquisitions, a lot of mixture. So I'm sure that you'll have great insights. Thank you for joining us. Okay.
Yeah.
Then.
Sorry, Doug. So my name is Ayaz Chakra. I'm one of the co-founders of PMG. We expand into new markets through acquisitions. So it's actually a way for us to do geographic expansion, and it's a central part of our strategy and has been since start. I've been running marketplaces and building marketplaces in different categories, geographies, last 15 years. And before that, I was actually doing M&As. I was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, kind of advising companies on acquisitions. Great to be here.
Likewise, it's great to have you, Ayaz, and it sounds like you've combined your expertise in acquisitions and then joining a company that's strategy is to acquire the companies. Sounds like a good path. Thanks. Yes, and Bart?
Yes, Bart van Muyen, CEO of Pitfalls, also a software company in the construction tech. We also make software for contractors, but then mainly about document management, safety, and quality inspections. This is my third software company, which was based on an M&A strategy, part of a private investor. I think over the course of my career, I did something like 20 acquisitions and the post-merger acquisition activities. So quite a lot of experience in that field, and happy to be here today.
Likewise. Thank you, Bart. Sounds like industry veteran indeed. Thanks. And Marek?
Yeah, I'm Marek. I'm co-founder of the Software House, and a slightly different perspective because we are a software consulting company. We build custom software and do lots of software development services, especially about the modernization. So as I say, I've been in many kitchens during this time. We have helped over 100 clients, variety of businesses, including modernization, including M&A. So I will be presenting maybe a little bit more of the technology and a little bit of like an outsider's perspective, how it looks from the vendor that is in this kind of process.
Great, thank you, Marek. Thanks. Is it possible to display agenda for our audience? Oh, great! We have the agenda. So our topic today we've divided into 4 main points. So after the opening, we want to move to the biggest challenges and fears in such transformation projects. Then on how to align business strategy with technology changes. Then on how we should approach it, whether we should move fast or follow a detailed plan. And then on how to make sure that such projects that don't break stuff and the business operates as normal during key transition periods. And at the end, the summary and key takeaways and final remarks and Q&A. There will be possibility, or there should be already a possibility to ask questions as we have the discussion going. So there is a dedicated place where you can post questions, and I would strongly encourage you to do so because we want to have this session as interactive as possible, and we want to make sure that we address the kind of challenges or questions that you have in your head. So thank you very much. Okay, so let's move to the first topic. So the first topic being the biggest challenges, because I discussed that there are a lot of excitement and opportunities connected with such projects where you have where technology companies merge or are acquired, and but then when you think about such projects, what would be the challenges the companies face, and a little bit of market insight. So according to Ernst & Young, when you think about tech or media or telecom sector, integration costs, they can eat about 6% of the total cost of the acquisition of the acquired company revenue. So that can be a substantial challenge to the company. And also, according to deal room estimates, depending on industry, such costs can range between 1 and 10% of the deal value. So there is a need to remove any obstacles and challenges and have the transformation as smooth as possible. But of course, it's easier said than done. So let's begin this topic with, in your opinion, what are the hardest challenges that companies face when such initiatives are started? Is it technology? Is it people? Is it processes? What are your experiences?
I can start. For me, what I saw a lot in when you start doing this is expectation management. So from the 3 of your choices, I would say people. If you acquire a company, do you all have the same expectations of what's going to happen? My experience is that if in the acquisition phase, you are not clear about the goals, about the next steps, about the first couple of months, about are we going to name it this or are we going to integrate that, and there's not enough alignment on that, that later on, after the acquisition, you have a lot of discussion. So being very clear at the start of the acquisition, so before the signing, about what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, what things are determined, what things need to be discussed, and how are we going to do that discussion, and who is saying yes or no. That helps a lot in discussion later on in the project.
Mm-hmm. And do you mean such alignment needs to happen on the managerial level, or do you also mean that it needs to happen on the whole team level?
Well, it starts, of course, with who's at the table during the acquisition process. And most of the times it are the founders, or maybe there is a CTO at the table, but most of the times it's a very small group. And with that group, you need to have alignment. If you are not clear about, are we going to rebrand the product, or are we going to kill one of the products we acquire, or it gives so much discussion. So having that figured out and taking some extra time to have those discussions beforehand just saves you a million hours after.
Yeah. And do you normally create a document out of those discussions, or how critical is it then to document those agreements?
Very. So make sure you talk about integration and the integration plan beforehand. So make a document like, this is what we are thinking. How do you view it? Give feedback, and then translating that in a project plan. That you definitely need to do that before the acquisition is finalized.
Yeah, I think, I absolutely agree with everything you said, Bart. I think, what I've seen quite often is, as a fear, is just even rolling it back a bit. So many companies, I feel, shy away from M&A as a topic altogether. Whether you're, a CTO, a CEO, or any other C-level, a lot of companies feel like acquisitions should be a part of your strategy once you become, a very great size. And I think that's a lot of the folks around this table have done a lot of acquisitions, and I think just overcoming that fear that acquisition necessarily, it comes with a lot of unknowns, but a lot of those unknowns, a lot of that risk can be sort of, as Bart put it very well, can be sort of removed through careful planning. And once you unlock that strategy, it's almost like, you add one more, let's say, tool to your toolbox, or one more weapon to your arsenal that will then hopefully increase the probability of your company then, growing and becoming something very big. So I think the way we think about it when it comes to the fear or the risk, whether it's people or process or technology, is frankly for us different from situation to situation. We've come across all of those challenges. Hopefully not all three at once, but in varying degrees in every single acquisition. And the way we think about it is that the degree of complexity in each one of those areas is sort of like one vector. And that vector, that, let's say, if you aggregate this to just one metric of complexity, that will then drive, how much are we willing to pay for this business? If it is very low complexity, it means lower risk. And then that, might increase, let's say, our appetite to pay for that business. And then you also look at, the future potential. How complex will it be? Or what is the risk associated with generating these synergies or improving this business the way our, financial projections are expected to do? So I think complexity is not a binary, something is too complex or not complex, or not very complex, but rather it's a measure that then will inform other potential decisions and have other, implications, whether that's price or how much time you budget for the integration and so on and so forth. But I think the first fear is just kind of overcoming the idea that acquisitions does not necessarily have to be something reserved only for big companies, and can actually be a core engine of your business.
Wow, thank you. Yes, so it sounds like you would encourage companies to consider M&A, and if done successfully, that can increase their arsenal. So sounds like maybe even trying a acquisition on a smaller scale, also just to learn the process, just to understand how to do it, already prepares you for larger acquisitions in the future and strengthen your arsenal. And also the second point that you mentioned is about like, if you know how to do it, I understand that complexity, because you've already done it once or twice, then the complexity of any such acquisition will be smaller, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that increases the value of potential future acquisitions if you already know how to do it. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think that generally, like following what Ea said about your next tool in your toolbox, we have to understand that it's usually like, or it's always, I think, the company who is acquiring has the experience, like should be the one that is bringing the experience. Of course, the first time you have to learn things, but it's important to really create yourself processes and expectations in your company, how each and every next acquisition is going to go, right? Because this is like the larger you get, the more acquisitions actually will happen. And usually it's a big company acquiring small company. We often acquire startups. Those are companies that don't have the same level of processes. They don't have the same level of technical understanding. They don't have the same resources on their end. Like it's often that you discuss it with a 2 people, 3 people team, out of which like 50% are the owners of the company, right? So you come with so much more expectations towards this business that they wouldn't plan for, right? So you want to introduce proper technical solutions, right? You want to introduce proper processes, you need governance and so on. And those are the steps that if you are not clear about them to the company that you are acquiring, you cannot expect them to be prepared for this, right? I had so many discussions with the owners who we acquired the software from and who are still working there on why we are doing this. This is completely in contrast to what they have been doing in the past. But that's the reality of being a large company. You cannot measure things the same way as you do it with a small company. You need a certain level of governance, a certain level of standardization. And even though it costs to implement those things, you should take this cost into your return of investment calculation, because you will need it. You cannot have a large enterprise and then adjacent to this few small companies, because you cannot operate the business like this. And this is a huge cost of the acquisition, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So thanks. So in your opinion, understand aligning on governance will be important challenge, yes? And you need to spend effort on this area. You cannot treat it as like maybe we'll sort it later, because things may fall apart if you don't do it. Correct?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the pieces of in the puzzle.
Yeah, I totally get Adam. It's also like Adam says, it's like you suddenly have like a company of 2 speeds, I would say, right? That there's like a different process in one, different process in the other, different shipment methods, different culture. So you have to put it all together. So this is something between the process and the technology, basically. And what I also usually happens is what I call it not invented here syndrome. So if something is even good, but it's not like the one that you invented, you become kind of skeptical about it, and you have to bring the people closer together to actually get each other and create this kind of mix.
But what you just said about not inventing here brings another idea about, or something to think about, another challenge there that I see a lot in those M&As, whether those are companies we acquired or we just spoke with. It's a lot is built in-house. Like things that you wouldn't think of building in-house are built in-house. And whilst, again, this works for a startup or might work for a startup, if you are a large enterprise, this no longer is sustainable, right? And this really has to be taken into the account, because if you speak about, I recall situations where you would see a software that doesn't use frameworks, because framework is not built in-house. And of course, well, that could be a good start, but in a long run, you cannot run like this, like all the dependencies that this creates, and then you have to replace it. Like you have to actually tear down a big part of the application and start introducing frameworks there. This is a major cost so the code can be even clean, right? But if you want to have a sustainable software, you have to implement framework, and those are hundreds, if not thousands, of hours to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. So those stuff are usually a very legacy ones, and they are not maintained. Well, of course, there are some exceptions, and as you say, there are also situations when they actually, during the time, we had like tons of systems that were like 10 years old. But the thing is that in the meantime, there were already like a software as a service services that already solved the same problem. And basically, the thing is that you don't even rewrite it, you don't even maintain it, you just throw it away and use the one that is already on the market and run fine.
So what you mean, Marek, is that maybe 10 years ago, when the software was being created, such tools didn't exist, so they were obviously not used, and then nobody either had time or thought about replacing them, correct?
Yep.
That makes sense. So, okay, so I think we've been a bit scary in terms of, speaking about the challenges, but maybe from your experience, what are the real challenges of such projects, and what are the things that people fear about such projects, but they are not real challenges? Maybe that angle. Are there any
you can hear this?
Such transformations?
I think you will hear this. I assume over and over throughout this session, which is that pretty much all challenges, or vast majority of them, can be overcome by just very diligent planning. And we've learned this the hard way. Just to be clear, we've done so with Pet Media Group, our current business, we've done 7 acquisitions to date. Done a few in previous businesses as well, but with PMG, our first acquisition back in 2018, we underestimated. As a team, I think we're all very, very nerdy and love data analytics and so on. So we naturally then looked at the analytics, and we spent about a year post acquisition kind of migrating this platform, and so we did sort of a small launch to a subset of the users, and we saw, hey, this seems to be performing a lot better. This is a better platform. Just period. All metrics are looking great. And then when we launched, we suddenly got bombarded, across all channels, and got bashed on social media. And people, in Sweden, where we're from, phone numbers of people are public information. So people started calling our phone numbers and harassing us and complaining, and with all right. So I think what we underestimated back then was, I guess, an intangible of customers of the acquired entity, especially if that's a business that has been around for in this case 2.5 decades almost. They're used to that business and that experience, that application working in a certain way. So even though you might think that you've improved things, you've reduced latency, or you've reduced your increased conversion rate, there's also that kind of soft factor of just people might be hesitant towards change. And that is one thing I think that we've really internalized as, any migration that we do going forward. From that point on, we realize it needs to be done more in increments rather than sort of a big bang migration from one day to the other. Other than that, I think a lot of the migration integration steps, if you carefully plan and look, properly dig into the analytics, not only quantitative data, but also qualitative data, understanding, how critical is every part of the system, what is the NPS or the customer satisfaction of every part of the system, and then based on that, kind of plan accordingly. At least our experience is that every migration we've done since that first one have been a lot more smooth, and because we've gotten kind of better and better at it, I guess.
Yeah. We were in this process as well, and I remember, yes, when we were like deploying going live with the first one, it was kind of big bang, and it was all in in one go. You probably remember that. and and we had a good retrospective afterwards, and we I think we created this kind of checklist, right? What needs to be done for the future acquisitions with going live, and I agree that every time we do it, it gets better every time, right? So this is.
I think I promised my wife. We had just gotten our daughter a few months before. Great timing. I promised my wife that, hey, it's going to be quite a lot of work with this migration, but then as soon as we're live, we'll take a few weeks, just you, I, and our newborn baby, and we'll do some parental leave. And then, the migration went live, and I thought, hey, we're heading to Italy, guys. Great, high five. And then I had to promise her another parental leave because obviously I spent that entire 2-3 weeks from our hotel room in Italy, trying to put out fires.
And maybe to add to that, I think, yes, you can plan as much as you want. And for sure, repetition makes it better, but also expect the unexpected. When you acquire a company, there's always things you didn't know, things will turn out to be worse, people issues. So expect that. And my experience is then hire some people who have seen a couple of acquisitions before, so you have them on your team. You have experience on how to deal with this uncertainties, because they will be there.
Yeah, I completely support this, and I think that generally you have to be aware that there will be like things hidden behind the corner. Like you can check a lot of things, but there is always something behind the corner, especially again in small companies where a small group of people do a lot of things. Like they are not specialized in one thing, they are doing just a lot of things. And there is a main line, but there are also like parallel lines, like branches and so on. But usually during the acquisition, you speak only about the main line, yes, because you are interested in the product that you are acquiring, and with that product you are acquiring the company, right? But there are other parts of the business that you might not necessarily know about. And I think that other thing that is really worth emphasizing is that it's important to have a really good partner for due diligence, whether you are doing this yourself, if you have capacity for this, or have a really strong partner in due diligence that does work from facts, from data, from metrics, rather than from anecdotal, because I've seen both, and especially when you go with anecdotal approach, you only hear the good side. You are led by people who are actually selling the company, and if you really look under the carpet and under the hood, and you have somebody who can really like open the code and go through the code, run static analysis on the code, understand the structure, look into the hosting part, like see what's actually being hosted in the infrastructure that the company is using, stuff like this will really give you much more information. Like I cannot emphasize this enough. Like the due diligence, and especially on the technical side, is super important.
Great, and thanks for saying this, Adam, because actually we're going to have a separate part of the discussion today concerning especially planning. So we'll be happy to continue on, how to organize this due diligence and what to analyze before the deal is made, and also after the deal is made, how to divide it in a following session. Great. So I see that we have great discussion. I just wanted to remind our audience that there is possibility to ask questions. Of course, if you have any questions to the speakers, please post them, and we'll be able to answer them. Okay, so now moving to the second topic or second part of our discussion is how to align tech and business strategy. So business goes one way, technology hopefully goes the same way or not. How to make sure that the two angles follow the same path, and we have the best value that we can from the deal, and a little bit of market insight. So McKinsey's research shows that many technology-driven mergers and acquisition, the deals struggle to capture the initially intended value, and most acquisitions fail to deliver because of the cross-selling opportunities, because of the problems with fully integrating platforms, and there are some synergies often that are not fully utilized because of those problems, and they are left on the table. So question is how to weigh in terms of what should be the key drivers of such integration, technology integration after merger and acquisition. Should it be cost, synergy, customer experience? How to create like a one path that satisfies both angles?
Yeah, so maybe I will start. Because when you mention synergy, I always tend to say that synergy is like M&A's favorite word. And it's, is it or not? Because this is what I hear from my clients. But basically, you can when you're doing an M&A, you can buy the revenue, you can buy the market, you can buy talent, but you cannot really buy the synergy. You have to engineer it to some extent. This is something that it's kind of technological, especially in the third decade of the 21st century, because yes, we are in the future. It's basically the synergy happens it starts on the technology level. So at least from our perspective, usually how we approach it, we try to align with the synergy and see what the client expects from the synergy, and then lead the technology in a way that makes sure that actually this synergy is possible. And I think this is the key thing.
Interesting. So would it be that it's often, or in most cases, this is business-driven process that technology follows, or do you also see place for like technology-driven acquisitions or mergers? Maybe Bart, I know that you have a lot of experience in this area.
Well, of course, every acquisition has a different goal, like there could be just a reason to buy a certain market, or indeed buy a specific type of technology. In general, today we're looking more on the technical side of things. My approach with technical integrations and choices to be made is actually looking to the customer value. In the end, you want a good experience for your customer. You buy a certain technology or a certain product, a value for a customer, because you want to put that next to something you have, or you want to make the experience more complete for a customer, and therefore you buy that product. And then the question is, how do you get there as efficiently as possible? And my personal preference is, like sometimes there's the idea like we're going to completely refactor or whatever. Like that is just not getting you value, and not getting you a good ROI. So how can you get this visible integration for a customer with minimum effort? That is the core. For me, my experience is that technical, like tech stack migrations, refactoring of a lot of work is just very costly and doesn't give you the benefit you want. So have a business mindset in the technical consolidation. How can we achieve for our customers the best result with as minimum technological change? And that is, I think, for me, the balance I look for a lot when we buy products and try to create a good customer experience.
Interesting. How about others? Do you also share this opinion?
Yeah, to me, I can also support that first and foremost, this is business driven, right? So we have to understand already at the beginning of M&A, what are we going to do with this? As Bart started this whole discussion at the beginning of this meeting. Like you want to know why you are buying this, and this, as Marek said, yeah, you can buy it for the revenue, but there's not that much value in buying it for the same revenue. You want to grow that revenue. You want to have something from that synergy. You want to get more, and then usually look from the customer perspective, because again, you will buy usually products in your own space, in the industry that you are already working in, right? And therefore you want to make. My experience is that you often want to have a customer, such an offering to the customer that makes it like no-brainer for them to take both products, right? To take them as a common, larger offering, and if you can provide this common experience, like common authentication, possibility to exchange data between the two applications, then it makes a strong case for the customer to take both products. But if you just go there and you are the only common denominator is the sales guy who is doing the sales, if at all you have one sales guy and not two sales guys selling your products, but one sales guy, then it's not such a strong case, right? Because ultimately, like the customer can say, okay, I can buy this product from you, and I'll buy a competitor product from somebody else. But if you show them that, hey, our products combined can do a bit more, or can take a bit more burden off your hands and do things automatically, then this is where you get really nice results. But we also have to remember that, for example, changing the authentication system in the software usually is not that easy, especially if that is a homegrown system. So if you think of like those kind of homegrown systems where you don't have an ORM and everything is like in plain SQL queries, and the whole authentication system is actually stored in the database or some kind of files, then it's of course much more difficult to move to an SSO kind of approach than if, for example, somebody is already using a framework, right? And as I said before, like a lot of times you will see this kind of approach that companies are not using, the small companies are not using the frameworks, etc. So again, important to understand those synergies before you decide on actual acquisition, because this will be a huge cost to you, right? Of course, you can have smaller or low-key synergies by just exchanging data through APIs. That's usually the easiest way to do. But as long as you don't have a common authentication, you don't have a common lending platform, it still does not feel like one product, yes? Because at the end, you can connect via API any two products you want, right? You can, of course, if the products, of course, offer API, yes, but it's easy to buy two different products and then hire a company like the software house to combine the two together via some kind of small piece of software that talks to both APIs. But if you have one platform, one authentication, then it's completely different experience.
Yeah,
I think another challenge that we've faced, multiple times, and or we often have to make, pretty tough decisions, is you're buying an entity, and that entity might have, or is likely to have subcomponents. Think about it as maybe business units, or that entity might do more than just one single thing. Might be different customer segments, or however you want to slice it. And I think we've often faced a situation of what out of all these things, what do we keep? What do we continue to develop? What do we perhaps remove entirely from the migration or from the acquisition process? And I think the reason why that's challenging is because it's almost like it could sometimes feel like you're kind of cutting off an arm or a leg of that business that you're acquiring, hopefully for the greater good. That could be an underperforming business unit or something else. I think the reason why it's challenging is because it's typically a big decision that might have double-digit % impact on revenue or profitability, but also in many cases there'll be a management team or a founder of that acquired business that will feel very, very strongly or almost emotionally about that business unit. Maybe that's why they've held on to it, even though it's maybe not performing. And so those decisions as well, where you need to sort of align internally, but also perhaps with the acquired entity, of kind of conveying the message of, why are we deciding not to keep this part of your business that you might be very, very attached to. And as I think, Adam, you said earlier, which is, sometimes there'll be almost legacy or something that is developed organically, and no one's really thought about why did we do it this way. It's just always kind of been that way, and that's something we see very often with certain strategic decisions or perhaps underperforming parts of businesses that no one has really looked into because it's just kind of settled into that's just how status quo is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So how to find this balance? Because I understand now that customer experience and customer value should be the primary factors, but at the same time, you have those dependencies of technology. You need to clean certain things. Yes, refactors, for example, they can be costly, but sometimes necessary. So how to approach it in a smart way?
Yes, when you said if you have to decide to keep it or do something with it, actually it reminds me also of a pattern that is in the technology. I understand that the whole business is a lot more than the software, but if you're speaking from the software perspective, we have a model called 6R. This is a model of making decisions about what to do with the software, with the modernization. So these 6 R's are like re-architect, rewrite, repurchase, retain, right? So there are a couple of options, and basically on the at least on the software level, you can do it in the way that you divide it into the small chunks, and then each of them you basically make a decision if you want to basically leave it as it is, or you want to remove it completely, or you want to rewrite it, or you want to put a more cost on this, or as I said before, maybe change it into something that is already working as a SaaS. So basically, this has when you see the software, you somehow can also put it into the consideration when you're thinking about the whole business, because this is probably, if you decide to drop something in a business level, probably you also decide to drop something on the software, right?
Yeah, and we know that many people think about whole platforms or pieces of software as like what I should do with the whole software, but also our experience is that you don't have to look at the whole platform. You can also divide it into smaller chunks and treat each of them separately, correct? Do you have such experiences?
Yeah, I think for us it's that's 100% of the cases we look at. Just for context, we're a marketplace business, so think about us as acquiring kind of eBay platforms or Gumtree or OLX, depending on what country you live in, and those will always have, it's a pretty wide. There's a lot of variance in how these platforms look, how they operate from a feature perspective, from a business perspective, geographical perspective, segment and so on. So there's always choices like that we make. I think it's probably different if we were acquiring, B2B SaaS with a very, very niche use case. We'd probably look at it just as one single platform. But for us, we've seen all kinds of variations and all flavors. And I think we always think about it as what are the main components of the system? Which ones of those do we think A, are critical to the user, and B, it's almost like a matrix, sort of how critical are they, from critical or not critical, and then also what is the user satisfaction or the customer satisfaction of that part of the system, high or low, and then based on that kind of classic consulting 2x2 matrix, we'll make some prioritizations. Anything that's critical, we want to maintain. If it's critical and users are already happy with it, we just kind of take it as is. If it's critical but users are unhappy with it, that's where we invest time in kind of improving or renovating the existing solution. And that's typically where a lot of our resources will go in the qualitative interviewing phase, kind of speaking to customers, understanding why are they not happy with this very critical part of the system, just so that when we migrate, we also then invest the time and resources to actually solve those pain points or improve those areas where users are unhappy.
Yeah. So this matrix that you said, we also create this matrix for our clients. We usually tend to add this this technical level there. So also like about what's the complexity of this. But yes, exactly. We build this kind of modernization metrics, like assuming the cost, the technology, and the gains all together. That's a really nice exercise.
Okay, so I think that these are important insights about looking first on the business side, but also taking into account technology and making decisions, and that you don't have to decide on the whole acquired company or the whole platform, but you can divide it into smaller pieces and decide, have a different strategy for each of them, and have a clear plan of what you want to do. So I think that it naturally moves us to the third part of the discussion, is about, I think we mentioned already many times during the session today, the word planning. So I think that according to Bain reports, that companies that deliver quick wins within the first 100 days of M&A, they are twice as likely to succeed through the whole project. This is market insight that we have. At the same time, important question is whether during such initiatives we should be focusing early on quick wins and just do them, and like the rest will naturally follow, or we should still have a good plan, solid plan for the whole process. And I wanted to get your opinion to how much planning should happen at the beginning, and also what kind of planning should happen before you make the deal, because these are critical things you want to make to align the management, but also to make good decision on buying company, and also what you can leave, like to figure out later after you acquire, then you make more operational plan. So I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, so we already talked about it a little bit in the beginning. Like my view is set the expectations right of the high level plan at the beginning, make a integration plan where you say like, hey, the first year this is going to happen, and we're doing it in this order. So that at least the expectations of what time is needed, who needs to be involved, what topics are we going to address when, are clear, set out in time. And then for me, some things you need to do fast, like making people feel part of the team, changing over, for example, the IT, like the office applications, that we're all working in the same tool, and we all have the same chat environment, stuff like that. So you show we are making progress in becoming one company, becoming one culture. I think that is for me the most important, because the technical part, you first need to understand how it works, and it just takes time. You need to do deep dive sessions, you need to have people work together for a while. Making too rapid decisions on the technical side when you don't fully understand is, I think, a pitfall. So set out the high level planning, focus on getting the teams integrated, setting up the meeting structures, etc. But take time to finalize the technical plan, because otherwise you're making decisions which you're gonna regret later on.
Yeah. Adam, you mentioned about the importance of an audit. A strong audit should be a prerequisite of any successful M&A. I think this is what you meant. So how deep do you think such an audit should go into the technical aspects of such projects?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer, but you for sure want to understand the quality of the software that you are buying, and you also want to understand the pathway to your most important goals. So as Bart says, like, you set those goals, and then I think those goals should be defined before you actually do the due diligence, and then say, okay, like, let's look. Let's perform the due diligence from the perspective of those goals. Like, so for example, what I said before, maybe you want to have one common platform with one authentication, right? Set it out to people who are doing the due diligence and ask them what does it take to get there, right? Because it's one thing to tell you the software is like 4 out of 5 in terms of quality, but it doesn't tell you anything about how much it will take you to get to your aspirations. But at the same time, like you never can get to the nitty gritty of everything. Like it won't be ever perfect, right?
Mhm.
But that's also why I think all of us, we know we work in agile in agile methodologies, right? So that's why you have those goals, you have those North Stars, but then you adjust, right? Your assumptions that are at the beginning might be challenged as you go, right? So you assume that A is true, but after a longer period, after talking with people, after checking some technical stuff, you will notice that it's not really the case, and maybe that path is no longer worth following, right? So I would say that plan ahead, make those aspirations, define your goals, but it's also not about working waterfall, right? Waterfall is not only bad for software development, waterfall is genuinely a bad thing to do, right? So plan, but be agile and be prepared to pivot, but of course in some boundaries of the financial proposition, right? Because if you when you prepare the M&A, you calculate your revenue, you calculate your costs, and you can't after doing the purchase, you can't go back and say, yeah, like now it's going to cost us 3 times more, because this completely invalidates the whole return of investment.
Yeah.
Maybe a question from my
Yeah.
side to you, Adam, if you don't mind. I think you mentioned the topic of waterfall, which is super interesting. One of the things I think we haven't really cracked yet is whenever we migrate, we usually make a pretty detailed or meticulous plan up front on the timeline and how to migrate and what and so on. And then I think for our engineering, I'd probably speak for everyone on our engineering team when I say that the actual migration process is probably the least exciting part of their life versus usual more creative like product development when you think about developing new things. And so how do you avoid it becoming like a conveyor belt process where everyone just knows a year in advance exactly what they're going to be working on, and it's just kind of pushing through that body of work through the system?
I'm not really sure how to answer this, but because like at the end, those migrations are just repetition and something that you have to perform over and over again, right? Also depends what kind of migrations do you have to do. Like in our space, we do migrations from time to time from old systems to new systems, but I think that for us is more like convergence of systems, making sure that they work together, and therefore it's more creative work than just pure repetition.
Mm-hmm. So from my experience, yeah. So basically, the data migration is kind of crucial for those processes. I would always say that you usually underestimate how much you have to do to migrate the data. It's so that's why we usually do it in a way that we just put this data migration into the rest of the process of the whole modernization. We once made this mistake that actually we put one person saying, hey, you are responsible for the migration, and you will spend the next year thinking only about the migration, right? And this is this was very frustrating for this guy. So we try to do it in a way that basically the kind of thinking about the migration is the part of the whole process, and you also always have to answer. You said the question about the migration of the data. What about the data? And just be more like a data-driven thinker, and I think that you can somehow embed it into the rest of your work, and don't leave the data migration for the last moment. Usually you have to think it from the very beginning about the data, because it may take longer than you think. And also answering Adam about this audits. So we actually come up with something that we call the modernization roadmap sprint. So this is to agile because it has a sprint in the name. Yeah, but basically this is the 2 weeks of working on the modernization roadmap and analyzing the stuff. You can either do it like before the purchase, so as a kind of due diligence, or after if you already are in this situation. And yeah, as you say, Adam and Bart also mentioned that you have to expect the unexpected. You basically cannot, because those are usually very, very big systems tech-wise, and you cannot analyze this in one go. We also made those mistakes in the past that we tend too much of like waterfalling this stuff and analyzing every single detail, and it never happened because there's too much going on there, too much of the moving parts. But basically, what we found out is that we can, in 2 weeks, build this kind of roadmap. If you have like a good people that did it a couple of times, and you have a good process, and you know what questions to ask and what to find, you can come up with this kind of modernization roadmap that gives you the idea about the budget, gives you the idea about what you have to do, what are the priorities, what is easy, what is bad, and and yes, this is a high level plan, as Adam said. It's because my clients also ask me, hey, you will really prepare me a plan of a modernization of the whole system in 2 weeks? And I say, no, this will not be like a complete backlog plan. This will be a roadmap that will give you the idea of how it works and how it might cost, and what are the priorities, what are the biggest risks and changes. And this is the way you should start, right?
I think I just would like to come back for a second to those migrations. Just two thoughts that came to my head. The first one is, of course, it depends on the business, but you should always ask yourself a question: is migration really needed? Are you able to move the customers in a different way, right? Because we tend to think that all the data matters, but often it is just our perception or customers' perception, right? For example, like even if you don't talk about software that you build, but the software that you use, like sometimes you move from one issue tracker to another, and then you ask yourself a question like, should I migrate everything? And the first answer would be, yeah, of course, we need all the history. But at some point, if you think about this, from different perspectives, you would understand that actually what matters is the future, and the past not necessarily. Of course, there are some compliance needs and so on, right? So this is the first thing you should always ask yourself: is the migration really needed? And the second thing is the migration work? Is this something that makes your beer taste better, right? So is this really something that you should be doing as a company, or should you ask somebody to do it for you, right? I remember a few years ago, the software house were helping us actually to migrate from a very outdated. So we basically bought a company that was composed from 3 different pieces of software, and one was extremely old. Like the technology used there was even quite strange. Let's put it like this. And you guys really helped us to migrate from that system to a new system by creating basically workflows in AWS based on lambdas and so on. And the only thing that we had to do is basically make sure that there are APIs available one way or another. I think that the older system didn't have APIs, so you plugged into directly to the database. The other one had APIs. And you need a consultancy from us, like how do you map the data, and even to the extent that to some extent we were led by you by somebody creating like special mapping tables in Confluence or in Excel, and we just said, okay, this piece of data maps to this piece of data maps to this. This is the transformation that has to be applied, because at the end, like, well, maybe there are companies that are doing M&As every single month, but usually the M&A is something that you do every year, every 2 years, or maybe even not less frequent. So you can think of this like in terms of like your resources; those are spikes in your resources, right? So either this spike becomes the dip in some other part of your company. So you basically insource people from some other project, and then you harm that project, or you make a decision. Okay, this spike will go outside of our company, and we'll ask somebody else to do it for us. And I think that the latter is usually the better choice, unless you really have that much resource bubble in your company, which I don't think that in current day and age is really the case with any company.
And about migrations, well, I've learned a hard lesson as well. Like I am talking for the business to business space. I can imagine that for business to consumer, it's different, and you want everybody on one platform. But if you have multiple of similar applications, you bought a competitor or you bought one with an old platform or whatever, ask yourself, do I really want to migrate customers to a new platform? In my experience, migrations are always very expensive and very painful. They always get much more expensive than you think. You spend much more hours doing the migrations, both on the technical side as the customer guidance side, and you could just create frustration with customers, which is maybe not needed. Can you not keep that old platform in a corner? Just keep it in maintenance mode. If customers are happy, don't touch it. Forcing them to migrate, my unfortunate bad experience in that makes them leave. Because they have a reason to look around again. They have a reason, like, yeah, if I need to migrate anyway, if I need to retrain my people anyway, I can also look at competitors. It's just, in my experience, a very bad practice. So also in my current company, what we said, we had a couple of these cases. We said we never force migrate customers. If they want to stay on the old platform, fine. They don't get any updates, but they are fine where they are. If they're happy, keep them happy. And if they feel that they're missing out on the new features on the new platform, fine. But then you start over new in a new system as a new customer, and we're not going to migrate, because migrate always creates frustration and unnecessary pain. So that's my take based on some bad experiences. Yeah.
But it's interesting what you said, Bart, because sounds like you are addressing two problems at the same time if you follow this method. Because on one hand, you let them be in existing systems, so you remove their friction. At the same time, sounds like if you treat them as a new clients in the new platform, then you don't need to do all the migration from the
Exactly. And they get a positive onboarding experience with something you already did multiple times. They don't have like with migrations, you always have missing data, stuff which it doesn't work like it did in the past. Well, if they know they're going to a new platform and they know they are treated as a new customer and they cannot take their old data, they have a whole different experience. They have a positive experience instead of a painful experience.
And your migration
and they change when they are ready. Not like you have to migrate now because we force you to, but when you're ready, when you think it is a great time to move, when you have the resources, when you want the new features, then we move you as a new customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're referring to this kind of what they call the Big Bang model. So basically, there is a new platform, and there is a moment when this new platform appears. So yeah, in these cases, you want to have like a fallback for the old platform. This is what usually happens. Is for sometimes you have this catamaran, as I said. So basically, you have to run two and make the users choose, as you say. This is for voice advice. But what also can be a pattern is that basically instead of creating a new system, you try to rebuild your existing solution, but module by module. So like slowly leaning towards like a new system. So this is basically more like an evolution than the revolution.
Yeah.
Adam is smiling because not always you can do that, but with the right technical skills, you can sometimes divide these modules, and you can try to basically change the module after module and make the users get used to it over time. Adam?
100%. And I think that when you, but this is a different question. If you see you're on an old stack and you need to do something with it, do you want to rebuild in a new technology or just refactor the current one step by step? Again, in my experiences, the one of rebuilding always takes much more time than you think, always is much more painful. You need to do migrations and your customers are not being happy.
Yeah.
They're happy on the old platform, refactor it step by step. Take your time. Customers don't feel the frustration. In my opinion, the better approach,
and it's
and a more affordable one.
That's true. What also happens is what I call a chasing a rabbit. So there is a team building a new system, but the old system has to be maintained unless you just completely freeze it, which is not good for the business. So they keep updating this old system, and this team building the new one actually is already left behind, because when they finish, the old system actually has the features that were not even included in the new one.
100%, and you never can copy 100% of the features. We have been building this system for 15 years. So how do you think that in 1 year you can completely rebuild a 15-year product? And that means that when your customers migrate to that new product, there's always things missing, and they compare it to the old one. It's like, in my experience, is not a good process.
When you just started talking about this, that's exactly why I was smiling. And just let's make it very clear: it's not about the maintaining the old product, but it's actually growing the old product. Because unless you are completely aligned with your product organization that they don't add a single new feature on this old application, then you should not start doing the rebuild, right? Because if you are not, then exactly you will have this, like I was actually just looking for a pen and paper to draw this, right? But you have those two lines, right? This is your growth of the old system, and this is your new system, right? And there's delta. This delta actually keeps growing bigger and bigger. I remember this. There was a speech given by CTO of some bigger company. I think it was, I don't know, maybe Info or something like this. And basically that's what they did. They tried to, for I think 4 or 5 years, they tried to rebuild the system. And basically they kept chasing the rabbit and never caught it. At some point after 4 or 5 years of investment, they basically scratched the whole project, throw it over to trash. And you can imagine like 4 or 5 years of large group of people building this, because I wouldn't expect that this was a small team. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of money that you basically put into the drain, right? So yeah, that's never a good idea. So first you have to really make a strong decision, and I think that decision has to be also backed up by information to customers, at least to your key accounts. We are not going to build on this system, but this is our roadmap. In 2 years, you will get a new system or something like this. Make the expectations aligned to what you are doing, and then you can start doing this. But again, as Bart says, you should always look into the perspective of refactoring, and for this, you really need technical heads to look into your code and say, is this even possible, right? We know that for one of the products, we had an external company doing a due diligence before. It was actually after the acquisition, but they were anyway validating the quality of the software, giving us like the repair plan, and that repair plan was basically like 50-50 build again versus refactor. We decided to refactor. We went into refactoring with you guys, and it was a long process, right? And we got only to like 65 or something like this % of it. Still, it yielded very good results, but it was, I think, 2 years process or something like this with relatively sizable team. So this has to be taken into the account, that those things take a lot of time, a lot of energy. And it's also important to make this very clear to business people, because I think that often business people, the non-technical part of the organization does not understand the complexity of software development, especially around this kind of stuff like refactoring, migrations, and so on.
Yeah, let's see how AI actually handles that. I have a couple of R&Ds running right now about the refactoring via the AI bots. Still, I don't have the results if this works. It seems like this is a nice way to go, that actually maybe the modernization will be way, way faster. I know, Ias, that you have actually made a significant changes to your process, right, regarding the AI.
Yeah, I think that generally we're constantly trying to experiment and understand where we can use AI across the business. I think we have some very low hanging use cases like customer support, increasing or multiplying the capacity of tickets that we can handle and users that we can answer, more than just the surface level questions, but actually digging into the systems and really understanding the root of the question and then answering that. But also when it comes to engineering, we've done a lot of work with the engineering team with obviously Cursor, but also just going super deep in the ecosystem of Gen AI and understanding, how can we shift the role of an engineer from kind of primarily writing code to a large degree thinking about themselves as context providers for the AI to write as accurate code as possible. So kind of prompt engineering and context engineering is something we spent a lot of time on. We still haven't found nirvana, I'd say, but we've seen huge improvements. From the very beginning, our CTO Tom has had a pretty rigorous philosophy around kind of tracking the entire pipeline, let's say. So DORA metrics, DORA, for those that want to do some reading on the side. But and so we've always had quite clear metrics on how much time do we spend when a ticket or is in review, when it's in merge, when it's being worked on. And so we've seen the impact and we're able to measure the impact consistently over time as we've gone deeper into the AI ecosystem, let's say. And today we found really good use cases for it when it comes to code review, helping an engineer understanding the merge request and the logical changes and so on, just to make it faster to get an overview.
So we are exploring right now how to use AI for the refactoring and for the modernization. And when I have results, I'm happy to share because we have a couple of test drives.
Yeah, but it sounds like it could bring a lot of potential, because as we were discussing, the challenge with addressing the legacy systems is that they are complex, and so in order to move further, add new functionalities, please users, you need to first address what's already out there. And if it's a large system, then you have a lot of work to do, and there's never good time. As Bart was saying, that it's probably better to avoid such projects where you need to completely rebuild the system unless completely necessary. So maybe in the future, if AI can speed up a lot of this process, then it will be easier to take such larger initiatives. If you can have the legacy work done faster and then focus on adding the new things that please the users without neglecting the parts that already worked before and need to be rebuilt.
I saw there were some specific questions around tooling for customer support and kind of AI-enabled tools. Feel free to, whoever I'm not sure who asked the question, but feel free to just add me on LinkedIn. Happy to walk you through it in terms of, where we are today and kind of what we have planned coming next.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And this is a question from the audience that about the tool for ticketing. Yes. Great. Thank you. If we're speaking about questions from the audience, in between we have received some interesting questions. Maybe we can answer them now. So the first question was about your biggest mistake or unexpected issue during mergers. So what went totally wrong, and what did you do to recover? I think we had one case from Bart already mentioning about the migration users from old to new system. But if you have other major problems, then
it was not something I was directly involved with, but for example, the company I'm working for now, We acquired a company a couple of years ago, and indeed one of the things what happened was that they saw a product with an old tech stack and decided to completely rebuild the application. And what happened? They thought it would take them six months to a year. In practice, it took them 3 years. And for 3 years, the whole team was occupied with rebuilding something which was already there. And for 3 years, they didn't do any innovation. So again, like I think the core message there is like always think like, what is the business aspect? Do our customers really need this? And how do you keep making sure you keep adding business value for your customers, because that is where you get the money, and not from it that it looks fancy on the back end. It needs to be practical for the customers.
Mm-hmm. Good lesson. Thank you. Anybody else wants to share a moment of truth?
I think I've mentioned it before, but I've seen this a few times before, is that all those like side hustles that you have to manage, right? So you acquire a software or a group of pieces of software, but there are also those smaller side hustles that are there, like smaller pieces of software, and then you realize that you are serving one customer from a customized version of a fork of your software, something like this, and you are in luck if that fork has been made like half a year ago and there is a small delta, right? But I've seen forks that have been there for 10 years and so outdated that even the previous owners of the company did not decide to move it to more modern infrastructure. So they were like sitting somewhere, let's say it even in your closet server or something like this. And then you discover this only after some time, because I know you somebody unplugged the server and then you get a call from a customer that's like you don't even know that they existed, right? And then you have to rediscover, oh, okay, so there is this server, I plug it back in, oh, there is a code, what is this code? Like you realize that it is some kind of, as I said, an old fork of the application. And then you have additional maintenance, or you have to start thinking about how to move away from this. So then you have to make a decision, like do you migrate that customer, or maybe do you decide to end the contract with that customer? It all depends on the business value of that situation. Sometimes it's not only about money, but it's also about the reputation. Maybe this can be a small piece of business for you, like it can be bringing you pennies, but from another hand, this is an important customer that possibly you can have business with in other areas of your company, and you want to keep them satisfied.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Adam. Okay. The last topic that we wanted to cover today is protecting operations, but I think we've already answered a lot about the impact transformation can have on operational business continuity. But if there are any other aspects of such transformation projects, apart maybe from like rewrites or like data migration, that can disrupt business operation, business continuity, other things that we should have in mind when we we want to modernize, we want to transform, but at the same time there are users, there are business processes that are supported by the applications. So,
I think it's not only about what I will say. It's not only about M&As, but in general, like when we are thinking about business continuity, we have to be aware of what actually the business requires in terms of continuity. So sometimes you will have hard migrations to do, and sometimes you paint yourself into a corner. You like wind yourself up to make the migration as smooth as smooth in terms of downtime as possible for customers, right? But we are not all in banking industry, or we are not all in e-commerce industry. At least I can speak for myself. And and in a lot of branches of this business, you don't have to be available 24/7, right? Your actual SLAs, your agreements with customers allow you to take your time, right? So craft your plan to your actual business needs. Don't wind yourself to be super performant, because it costs a lot, right? If you want to make a migration or a huge change, deploy a huge change with no downtime, it will cost you a lot more than if you actually allow for that downtime. So as long as your business allows for this, as long as your customers are fine with this, and your contracts, your SLAs allow for this, take it easy, plan a proper downtime, announce the maintenance, and do it then.
And to add to the discussion, because I think we haven't talked about the rollbacks, you should have some rollback plan, which is not necessarily so easy as it sounds, speaking about legacy systems. This is one of the fears, that actually like technical fears, about touching anything which is not well documented from like the small acquired companies, that everybody is afraid to even touch it because they are afraid that they will just break something, and they will break it even irreversibly, so that there is no way of coming back, right? So actually, when playing with those things, you should always think about, okay, can we really roll it back to the place where it worked, right? Maybe this is something to add to the business continuity.
Yeah. Yes, I'm curious in your case, because you have an interesting model of acquiring other companies where you have a platform that was created specifically to absorb new acquired businesses. Do you then have a rollback plan when you attempt such migration?
Yeah, we do, and typically, on their migration, let's say if we see that we've gone from big bang migrations. At that point, Marek referenced the example from the UK and back in 2011, which was our first and most chaotic one. We sort of gave ourselves, okay, there's going to be some issues when we migrate. We know that big bang migrations rarely go fully according to plan. So we gave ourselves 24 hours. And we said, okay, if we can solve the most critical issues within the first 24 hours, we'll continue on this new migrated platform. If not, we'll roll back. And rollback for us was a fairly straightforward process. We essentially just rolled back to the previous system. So we did not do these kind of canary migrations where you run them either in parallel or migrate little at a time. Today, the migrations is much smoother, especially for migrating a major platform. So in the last 12 months, Marek and his team at Software House have helped us to migrate our biggest acquisition so far, which is in the US. And there we actually went as far as not only covering the feature gap between the acquired business and our platform, but we even developed the acquired platform. So the business that we bought, we developed their legacy systems just to make the jump between old system to new system as short as possible. Even though we knew we're going to throw away the old technology, we still invested engineering resources in developing that software just to make the migration as smooth as possible. And just from zooming out a little bit, I think the ROI on that effort was very high. It was by far our smoothest acquisition. Ooh. And it's also the acquisition where we could not afford taking any risk given sort of the stakes at play.
Yeah, it was like a strategic one.
So it sounds like
it took like over a year, right, to keep it that way. So this, even if we're like perfectly prepared and if we had technology to actually absorb it, it still takes over a year to do such a stuff, right?
Yeah. So, I see a parallel, because when we started this discussion today, we said about acquisitions being driven by the customer experience, how you want to increase customer experience, add value to your users by getting new technology on board. And that's a driver for like what to acquire. But from the discussion, sounds like also it should be like a driver on what to focus on when you create a plan, that it's not always cost and speed, but customer satisfaction. And I like this example that Ayaz just shared, where they have put substantial investment in technology just to make sure that there will be smooth customer experience in making the jump. I think that this is a nice story. I think we have time for one more question from the audience, and we'll be wrapping up the session. There is a question about the roadmap sprint, the modernization roadmap sprint, Marek, that you mentioned. What kind of people are involved in such initiatives? You mentioned 2 weeks is pretty short time.
Yeah, so there is usually the architect and the BA going on. So someone from the business and someone from the technology, basically. And we just the more idea is that those are people that love doing this stuff, because if you want to do it in 2 weeks, you really have to people that are very, very kind of crazy about modernization, crazy about learning stuff, crazy about seeing this old stuff. So it's more about like having a people that really enjoy doing this, and we're happy to to find the ones. So we have one. Usually there's one from the business perspective and one from a technical perspective that's inside, and then if they need during these 2 weeks additional help from the DevOps, from the development, from the design, they just take them by the hour and invite them to the process to take a look, consult something, and then go away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Marek, for sharing this. And as Marek said, we have this service called Modernization Roadmap Sprint that helps you create a high-level roadmap for such transformations. And I have good news for people who have been with us today, who have taken our insights. We have a special deal, 50% discount for this service. So if you feel that you need such a plan to make transformation in your company, do reach out and we'll be able to help. As for the session today, it was really great to speak with you. It sounds like we have such a great discussion that my feeling is that we have just scratched the surface, maybe, because there's so many more topics we could discuss through such initiatives, and maybe we'll be continuing this as a series of discussions around those topics. But I wanted to thank you a lot for your participation and your insights, sharing the knowledge. If you, in terms of the audience, if you still have any questions, if we haven't been able to answer all your questions, please reach out to us and we'll be able to help and assist. Thank you very much for watching and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye.